the general overview, you have a file menu, you have a bunch of workspace tabs, little top menu for your viewport, your outliner, your details panel, your 3D viewport, and your timeline. Off to the left of our 3D viewport, we have a toolbar. And if you move over it, you can click and drag it out, and it'll tell you what each of them are. You may also see a little arrow. So if you click on it, it'll open up, and then you can click and drag. Now this is your numeric panel. So if we hit N, or your properties panel, I call it the numeric panel, you'll have item, tool, view, and if you've turned on your curve tools, you'll have edit. If you have any other add-ons in here, they'll show up over here as well. Well, not all of them, but some of them will. So for now, I'm just going to turn on my screencast keys. And for some reason it's not showing. So let's go to view. I don't know why. Every once in a while they don't show. There we go. Now they're showing. Alright, so T for your toolbar, N for your properties and numeric panel. I'm going to refer to this as my numeric panel. Here in the top menu of our viewport, we have our modes. And for each mode, we have a little menu. A little bit more on our interface. Here we have the different tabs or workspaces to help us achieve certain goals. We can also make or add based on what we want to do, or we can customize them ourselves. If we look here at our layout, this is our default. Sometimes I'll hop into sculpting and you can see that there's a lot of differences here, and we can customize this overall interface or all of these interfaces. If we look over here at the top right of our viewport, we have our object types, our gizmos, and we can turn these on and off. And we can say which ones we want. So we can turn on our move, rotate, scale gizmos, or over here we can affect how the display looks. One of the important ones is our face orientation. So everything you see blue faces in the correct direction. If we were to see the inside of this, you see red. That means it's backwards. In an engine like Unreal, you'd see right through it. You wouldn't see a face. There's nothing there to bounce back at the camera unless you were on the other side of it. So if you see blue, good. If you see red, we need to flip it. We have our different types of displays. This is a rendered. This is a work dev. That's a solid mode and a wireframe. Now we also have X-ray. And this little drop down here will allow us to adjust how we see the object in our scene. I'm going to leave this one at default. I'm going to turn this to our default one real quick, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put on cavity, and I'm going to change that to both. And that just lets me see my creases really nice. If I needed to really see my edges, I could turn on wireframe. And that's right here. Here's our outliner. In our outliner, we'll have collections. And our collections can contain collections. And if we look up to the top of our outliner, we can add new collections. Now, depending on what we have selected in our outliner, will determine where that new collection is. So if we have a collection inside of our scene collection, we'll create the collection inside there. If we want to remove it, we can just select it, hit delete, or we can select it, right click, and we have a ton of options. We can change the color of these things. Let's go with green. Let's move our cube to our new collection. If we double click it, on the name itself, we can give it a name. So we'll just say this is working. This collection, we can double click and we can name it. See, let's call it lights and camera. Alright. We can turn those on and off here, so we don't have to look at them if we don't want. We can make certain elements of our outliner selectable. So we can come up here to this little filter or funnel, and we can say, hey, we don't want to be selectable. We want to be disabled in viewports, or rendered, or I don't know what this one is, holdout, or indirect. I've never messed with these last two. Doesn't mean they're not useful. For most of this, I don't necessarily need to worry about that. But I do like turning this one on and off. And that allows me to, not be able to select scene items, or maybe I don't want to select a background reference, something of that nature. Depending on what we have going on, will determine what happens down here. So if we have, let's say, our light, you'll see that we have a light setting. And this little list of properties changes based on our current selection. So now it's our camera. Here we have an object. And if you look at them, if you hover your mouse over it, it'll tell you what they are. So this is where our tool information is. So our render engine settings. Right now we're set to Eevee. This is our scene format, our view layer. So right here we can output files, set our animation range, our frame rate, all that good stuff. Works, you know, color depth and post-processing. Here we can set up our passes. This is our scene properties, so we can set up our units right here. So if we wanted to work in metric or imperial, here you can change to feet, inches, thous. I'm going to leave it set to metric. I'm actually going to leave it set as it is. A couple other things that we can set in here. I'm not going to mess with it. This is our world properties. We can set our HDRI images here. So our object properties. A few items in here that we can adjust. We can actually turn wireframe on here as well. Let's see. I'm not going to mess with any of that stuff. You can adjust your line art there. Modifiers. Modifiers are added here. This is our particle properties. We may get into particles. Physics, constraints. This is our object data properties. This is where we can set up UV maps, vertex groups, shape keys, or blend shapes or morphs. Vertex color, We even have a remeshing option, which is pretty cool, and we'll look at that as well. And we got some geometry data. We can clear sculpt mask data and stuff. Our timeline here at the bottom. We don't have an animation, so we don't need to worry about that. I think that is the gist of our overview. Now, if we like to have separate windows for our interface, we have multiple monitors and we want to have some of this stuff broken out, you can come over to one of the little areas and we can actually say, oh, forgive me, I can't remember where it's at. It's a duplicate area into new window, and you can actually have or tear out your sections, set it up however you want. And then you can change this to whatever you needed it to be. So if you need your graphs somewhere over on a different monitor, you can pull these out.